Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are back here on the Charge Live. Of course, we're starting early just due to a power outage in the Seattle area, so that is why I am on. But man, we have just gotten some great and crazy breaking news, of course, from Adrian Wojnarowski and of course WOJ and Sham. They are breaking huge stories right now. We have so much to talk about. But before we talk about this huge trade rumor and where players are going, Caris LeVert and Jared Allen looks like they're going to be gone. There's so much trade rumors and information and news that we have to go over. But before we do that, of course, this is your boy Bernie here on The Charge, giving it to you every day, Monday through Friday, talking about the latest breaking news, also NBA news and rumors, and also basketball opinions here on The Charge. Like I said, daily live show Monday through Friday. But man, do we need to talk about this breaking news? And I'm just going to cut right to the chase. So people, if you're joining in throughout the stream, just know that we are going to be talking about the James Harden trade. And we're just going to get right into it. So let's start it with the live scene really quick. Start with a little transition really quick. Alrighty, so here we are, guys. We got to talk about this. The Brooklyn Nets have agreed to acquire James Harden from the Houston Rockets. The Rockets will acquire 4 first-round picks and 4 pick swaps. Brooklyn will send out Caris LeVert, Jared Allen, and Taurean Prince as part of the package. So the Cavaliers, the 76ers were not involved in this package. I believe it's the Cavaliers, the Indiana Pacers, because I know Victor Oladipo's gone. We'll get into that trade in just a second. But we got Brooklyn. We'll send out, like I said, Caris LeVert, Jared Allen, and Taurean Prince. The Cavaliers will acquire Allen and Prince while sending a 2022 first-round pick from the Milwaukee Bucks, Rondis Kroskus, and Dante Exum to the Rockets. And that's just one part of it. And then we have to go here. And then now we've got the Rockets trading for Caris LeVert. So the Indiana Pacers have agreed to a trade to Victor Oladipo to Houston in a package centered on Caris LeVert. So Caris LeVert is going to be playing in Indiana, and Victor Oladipo is officially going to be moving on to Houston, which I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of that. The thing that I noticed too for everybody here is that why are you trading away a really good player, man? That to me is kind of one where I'm just kind of is that really the trade that you really want to make? But at the end of the day, that's just going to have to be the reality of it. I mean, this to me, guys, we are in an unprecedented time. We are in this crazy, it's just gonna be absolutely crazy thinking about all the depth that the Brooklyn Nets had and giving all of that up. And now you're gonna have to deal with a Kyrie Irving who is not even there right now. James Harden and Kevin Durant are gonna have to carry the mantle. Maybe that's the reason why the Brooklyn Nets made the trade. But man, that is putting a lot of pressure on Steve Nash's shoulders, and I'm not sure if he can do it, man. This is going to be a tough ask. Man, I don't know, man. Let me see here. Hang on, just seeing if any of my friends want to come on the Discord. Seeing if anybody wants to join me on Discord. But man, this is absolutely insane right now. The fact that the Brooklyn Nets right now are absolutely, I think this, honestly, I understand that superstars are rare and you can't grow them out of trees. It's very hard to even acquire superstars at this point. And, we talk about all these trade rumors and everything that's going on. And I think that this, to me, is going to be a trade where I don't necessarily think it's going to benefit the Brooklyn Nets like I think it did. I think what you're going to get is you're going to get either Thunder 2.0, which we all know how the Thunder team worked with Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook. But now instead of Russell Westbrook, you now have Kyrie Irving. But the problem, like I said, with Kyrie Irving, and we talked about it just before, and all these news organizations kind of talked about it earlier, is that I don't think Kyrie Irving's head right now or headspace is in basketball. And this is the reason why I think the Brooklyn Nets had to make a drastic measure. And I think that they really should have gotten rid of Kyrie Irving, but maybe the Rockets were a little hesitant on that because they know that Kyrie Irving's not playing basketball at the moment. And so to me, what I'm noticing here and what I'm seeing here is that we are, like I said, we are in uncharted territory right now with what's going on in Houston, what's going on in what's going on in Houston, what's going on in Brooklyn, and now the Pacers are involved, the Cavs are involved. I mean, the Cavs are definitely going to be trading away either Andre Drummond or They're going to be trading away their players. Larry Nance Jr. They're going to start having to trade away those type of players, man. It's just too many, in my opinion, to keep them all happy, right? Because there's just so much going on, especially like in Cleveland as well. I mean, this really shook up the landscape of the NBA as we know it. Because we all expected the trade to happen. Honestly, if I was the Houston Rockets, I honestly would have taken that Philly deal. Just because I know that Ben Simmons can maybe grow into that. I mean, what does that say about Ben Simmons? Like, we know that Ben Simmons was part of this trade rumor, and now no one wants him. I mean, this is going to be, a damning, I would say this would be damning to a guy like Ben Simmons, because the fact that you were part of trade talks along with Tyrese Maxey, and now they're just saying, you know what? You're not really that good of a player, so we're not going to deal with you. I mean, that's got to say a lot. And right now, we're just seeing this sort of situation at hand where, man, it is not looking too hot. And let's go to The Athletic really quick. Oh, whoops, I think I'm on the wrong one. I don't think I'm signed into this one. But, man, this is absolutely crazy. Let's go to ESPN. They have the breaking news here. Ramona Shelburne talking about it. We know that the saga is officially over. We know that after last night, we know that Houston was done with James Harden. James Harden was done with Houston. And this trade just absolutely kind of shook the whole world. I mean, let's go to Twitter and look at Adrian Wojnarowski's Twitter really quick. Oops. Of course, I don't have it logged in here. Oops. Let's go Twitter search, and let's go Adrian Wojnarowski, and just look at the kind of the Rockets are expanding a deal to send Caris LeVert to the Pacers for Victor Oladipo. We know that Brooklyn's requiring Harden in the three-way deal. I mean, that is so many picks, man. That is way too many picks, in my opinion, to be giving up someone like a guy like James Harden, man. Like, I mean, we're talking like a blockbuster deal right now. The question for me, and I think everybody here in the chat and everybody that's kind of like in the conversation that we're talking about, is now that the trade's happened, like, what is going to happen to the basketball? I mean, think about it. Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. Like, you have two MVP caliber players on your team that probably demand the ball more than anybody else. I mean, I know that James Harden and Kevin Durant played, but that was like years ago. We'll see if they can play again together. But now the biggest question for me is going to be, is this going to be enough to wake up Kyrie? Maybe not wake him up is the right word, but is this going to be enough to convince Kyrie to come back and play basketball? Are we going to see a convincing situation where James Harden comes back? Like, it's one of those things where it's just, I don't know. I really don't know what's going to be going on, but what we can tell you is that this trade is probably one of the biggest. I mean, Brooklyn has granted James Harden wish to be reunited with Kevin Durant in Brooklyn. Huge haul for the Rockets, but the Nets were determined to get another All-NBA player in his prime and get him with Harden, KD, obviously Harden and Kyrie Irving. We talk about the picks. It's the 2022, 2024, and 2026 with pick swaps in 21, 23, 25, and 27. So, I mean, we could see a huge landscape change in the NBA just due to this. But here's my warning to the Brooklyn Nets and to James Harden as well. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you ask for. The Houston Rockets once again gave James Harden what he wanted. And I think that James Harden owes it to the organization, owes it to the people of Houston to say thank you, which I know he did last night in his press conference, but he's got to owe it to them and be like, look, they gave me everything I asked for. And I said it in last night's stream when I streamed. If you guys don't know, Monday through Friday, check it out. I said this in my last night's stream. I said the Houston Rockets basically gave him Dwight Howard, gave him Clint Capella, or they drafted Clint Capella, but gave him Chris Paul, gave him Westbrook, gave him D'Antoni the offense. Now it's time for James Harden to show that he's interested in basketball. I mean, that's gonna be a lot of weight to take off. I mean, we'll see if James Harden can do it. I mean, obviously, food addiction is a real thing, and I want to see if James Harden's going to be able to lose the weight, because that's a big gut that you have to lose. And so, this is kind of one of those things and kind of one of those situations that we're looking at and seeing that the Houston Rockets are officially, they're going in a completely different direction. I do like the pickup of Victor Oladipo, but maybe that's the only way it would work. Like, I don't understand the Victor Oladipo trade, in my opinion. I mean, we can get into that probably a little bit later when we talk about kind of how the team's going to look now that James Harden's on the team, like what the depth chart's going to look like. I mean, if I'm not sure if they've updated the depth chart for him yet, but let's look here, see if they've updated it. I mean, the good news is that you keep a guy in Kevin Durant, Joe Harris, like that was definitely a big pickup. But now you lose like your bench. I mean, luckily you still have Landry Shamet, but Caris LeVert, man, that's a big loss in my opinion. Losing to him, Timothy Luwalu, like obviously that's kind of like a small one. Or like Torian Prince even is a big loss. I mean, this to me, you really like messed up your depth just to bring in a guy like with James Harden. Obviously, that's something that you do, that you need to bring in. But now that you've lost Jared Allen, you were already defensive rebounding-wise one of the worst teams in the NBA. Now that you've lost another center, I mean, who's behind him? Nicholas Claxton? And then fourth is Kevin Durant at center. Like, you don't have the depth. Like, everybody moves up a spot. And Kevin Durant has to play the center position now, it looks like, obviously in the small ball lineup. I don't know, man. I don't think that this is going to work the way that Brooklyn wants it to. I understand you wanted to get an all-NBA player. You wanted to get a player like James Harden to help your roster out, to help you do the things that you need to do in order to win games. But, man, I don't think that this was the right move, man. I really don't. I really think that this is a bad move for the Brooklyn Nets, and this is a huge win for the Houston Rockets. They basically did what the this is Boston Celtics 2.0 for the Houston Rockets. Whether the Houston Rockets, whatever they decide to do with Boogie Cousins, John Wall, and Victor Oladipo. I mean, with adding Victor, I don't know why the Indiana Pacers traded Victor Oladipo, even, to be honest with you. I think Victor Oladipo with Sabonis was actually a great combination. Obviously, it's not going to, like, I understand that Caris LeVert's a good player, but is he going to be a guy that's going to help you win championships? Is he going to be a guy that's going to help you develop and get to the NBA Finals, which I know the Indiana Pacers owners and front office wants to do. So to me, this is going to be one of those situations where, again, we'll see if it's one of those be careful what you wish for moments, because I feel like that's what's going to be in Brooklyn, man. I think Houston won this trade because of what they were able to get back in return. They basically got 8 picks. Basically, they basically got 4 picks and then picks that they can decide later on, to either swap with them or to stay where they're at. Like, if the Houston Rockets are so, like, let's say, for example, Brooklyn decides that they're going to blow everything up and they decide that, we're going to go with a different direction of the team. I mean, this to me is kind of one of those things where you definitely screwed yourself up. And so, it's one of those things that I want to see a little bit, I would say a little bit better. I don't even know what I'm trying to say right now, because I'm like really stunned about the trade that was just happening. I mean, we're talking about something that we've never seen before. It's unprecedented. Like this is one of those things where it could definitely change the landscape of the NBA, in my opinion. And so at the end of the day, we'll see what happens, and we'll see if the NBA is going to do something about it in terms of not really the NBA do something about it, but more so like what this does for the league. Do other teams now make moves? Do other teams decide, all right, we're going to go get that superstar? And like I said, I think that the Nets have to be careful for what they wish for. I mean, you already have a guy in Kyrie Irving who's not interested in basketball at the moment, a guy in James Harden who's not willing to put in the work unless it's his way. Like, that to me is just bad. That's a bad team. That's a bad ownership. That's bad teammates, in my opinion. Like, I would not want James Harden as my teammate if that's how he's going to quit. I mean, Boogie Cousins said it in his press conference after the game yesterday that, it stems from like years back and kind of what happened. I understand, Boogie Cousins went through the same situation in Sacramento, wanted that huge trade, ended up not getting it, or I believe he did get it to the Pelicans, and then, obviously didn't re-sign with the Pelicans and decided to go to Golden State, get a minimum, and then it just ended up not really being a good thing for them. But man, this is, to me, is like a huge trade, and there's a lot of pieces and a lot of things that we need to talk about for this trade. I mean, I don't think they've updated everything yet on ESPN, but let's look at Adrian Wojnarowski's tweet and see if he's added anything to his Twitter account. And it looks like here, whatever the future of Kyrie Irving with the Brooklyn Nets, this trade does one more important thing for Brooklyn. It makes a strong case to keep its current franchise most important player, Kevin Durant, beyond his current contract, which I think that was the main goal and the main reason why I believe that they got James Harden, because I'm sure Kevin Durant is pissed off that Kyrie Irving has not, come back to the team and started to help him win and starting to get back into a situation where they could, do really well. And now we're seeing that this might help James Harden stay in Brooklyn. I mean, this is an old teammate of his. We'll see if they're still buddy-buddy, if they still like each other that way. It's been a couple years, so we'll see if that chemistry is still there from years back in Oklahoma City. But honestly, I would have done everything to get rid of Kyrie Irving. Not because I don't think that he's a talented player, but because I know that basketball is not his thing. I mean, does this allow Kyrie Irving kind of I would say the scapegoat, or kind of the way to kind of say, you know what, I'm ready to retire and be an activist for whatever, for the cause that he has, which, you know what, I do not blame Kyrie Irving for. If Kyrie Irving wants to have the cause of obviously, with BLM and kind of what's going on with that, I am 100% in support of what he does. I really am. I'm really in support of like his right to try and get better situations for African Americans, for people that are in impoverished communities. Like I will never be against that type of stuff at all. But you also have a job to do as well. And you have to decide. And I think this is kind of and we talked about it last night's stream. You have to decide which, I would say, where you're going to go. Like, are you going to go on the side of activism, or are you going to go on the side of playing basketball? And you do have to choose, I think, because for Kyrie Irving, it's his choice whether or not he wants to do it, whether or not he wants to keep going. But man, this is absolutely crazy at the moment. I mean, we're talking probably one of the biggest blockbuster trades of all time. I just want to update my phone to make sure that we're kind of covering this as well. Oh, wow, my chat did not show up. That is so lame. That is so lame that my chat didn't show up. So apologize, guys. I did not see any of your comments in the comment section. Let me go to YouTube really quick. Make sure. Actually, let's do this. And then let me go here. Yeah, for some reason it's not showing up on my Streamlabs, so I apologize to anybody that was commenting in the comment section of what's going on. Let me see here. Let's see here, YouTube Studio. And I'll read everybody's comments from the beginning just because I know that, let's see here, live. I wish it was, maybe I need to edit that. Let's see here. Let me read everybody's comments really quick. I guess I have it on my phone. So let me read the comments really quick from everybody. So we got Supreme Gamer. It actually happened. Nets braved or barely gave anything to the Rockets. Rockets got Oladipo. Goodness, good decision. Depot, Harden such a baby. He played poorly on purpose. Back up, back up. Give us viewers just arriving your take. And that was at 127. Okay, so wow, I didn't really start that quick. DeAndre Jordan, they're gonna win a championship. I think the Knicks got a great move. Nets lineup, PG. Harden, Celtics should have gotten him. 8 picks is robbery. They almost did title. I knew his price wasn't steep. Wow, now this is good for Kyrie because it's less pressure on him. Celtics should have gotten PJ Tucker. Failed again. And I'm glad you guys are texting, and now I can finally see the chat. So I've caught up with everybody. Apologize again to everybody. For some reason on my Streamlabs, it didn't show up. Let me see if I can add a chat feature. Let me see if I can add the chat. Let's see here. I don't think I can, unfortunately. Chat box. Let me see if this is gonna work. Hang on one second. Let me just make the... Gosh, dang it. Let me see here. Alrighty. So we're just gonna see if that works. Hopefully you guys should be able to see it somewhere in the chat. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the situation that we're at right now with what's going on. I mean, this to me, like, I know that you guys are saying that this is a great move for the Brooklyn Nets, but I still think that they need to be careful what they wish for, because this to me could, like I said, could be what happened with the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett trade all over again. And Brooklyn fell for it again. Obviously with younger players, obviously with guys like Kyrie Irving being 28 years old, Kevin Durant being 31, and I believe James Harden also being 31 as well. So, they're in their 30s. So this is about, kind of like the kind of towards like the tail end of their prime. Like they probably have another like 5 years left in their prime. Maybe Kevin Durant a little bit longer just because of how tall he is and how he's able to get to the rim and other stuff like that. They have no depth on the other side, and that's the thing. Like, you gave up the depth that I think would have been a huge benefit for the NBA Finals, and I think that you really cost yourself in that situation. I mean, this to me, when we look at the whole situation at hand, like that's going to cost him, man. Like, I know that you can have superstars like James Harden, but we saw what happens when a guy like LeBron James doesn't have depth around him, when he doesn't have the guys around him to help him score the baskets. We see what happens. Like, LeBron James has been calling for depth, and, you're seeing the depth. And like I said, as much as we're talking about this move, as much as, what's going on in this trade scenario, what's going on here and there, I still think that this doesn't move the needle for the Brooklyn Nets to win a championship. I know people are, I would say, excited and saying like, oh, well, maybe the Nets can do it. I still don't think that they can do it because there's so many factors that you have to factor in when it comes to a guy like Kyrie Irving. Like, look, Kyrie Irving, we don't know where he's at right now in his head. Like, we don't know mentally where Kyrie Irving's at. He could be fine. He could just be chilling, relaxing, taking a vacation, taking a 2-week break. We don't know. But if you're the Nets fans, you aren't complaining, in my opinion. That's true. Like, I don't think you are complaining, but I think what you can complain about as someone that's just kind of like a neutral in this whole thing, is that like I said, you lost your depth. I mean, Caris LeVert, then obviously you get to keep Spencer Dinwiddie in case like you guys don't win a championship this year. You still get to keep Dinwiddie. He's hurt right now, so he's not being able to use. I'm rooting for the Rockets, man. I think the Rockets, as much as we criticize them, I don't think that they're to blame for what happened in this James Harden situation. And I talked about it before, and I before I even saw the chat from you guys. The reason why I put so much blame on James Harden is because, like I said, the Houston Rockets gave James Harden everything. And ultimately, at the end, the Rockets gave James Harden his ultimate wish, which was to go to Brooklyn and play with his friend Durant and play with Kyrie Irving and try and be on a championship contending team. Now I want James Harden to remember, you better get back into shape because this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I understand that you don't want to play. I mean, yesterday's performance against the Lakers, it's crazy that the Lakers broke James Harden to the point where like he played terrible and now they have to trade him. Like, this to me, like, James Harden better be in the gym right now working his butt off to get back into shape because like I said, like, this is going to be a situation where we're going to see, what type of player James Harden's made of. Like, is he going to be a guy that's made of the right stuff to win a championship? Because that behavior that he had, that's not the right stuff to build a team. That's not the right stuff to get you in a situation where you can start building and other things like that. And we will talk about the Victor Oladipo, Logan. I did see your comment there. But man, this to me is kind of a frustrating situation. And hang on, my phone is just blowing up because of this trade. Yeah, it's sad to see, man. I would be devastated as a Rocket fan. I mean, you would be devastated, but here's the thing, Ismail. You did end up getting Victor Oladipo, and we'll talk about that, like I said, a little bit later on in the chat. I mean, yeah, you get rid of James Harden. Obviously, that's really sad, but you basically set yourself up in the future. And like I talked about numerous amount of times in this, I knew the Rockets' kind of ending point would be that one season, the final season where Chris Paul was first traded to the Houston Rockets. That, to me, is when I was like, this is going to be the trade. But ultimately, like what I'm noticing and what I'm seeing from this whole thing is that the Houston Rockets did not lose this trade. I think they absolutely won it. I mean, yes, you didn't get like the superstars that you wanted, right? But you got some decent players in return. You got Caris LeVert. You got 4 first-round picks. Like, I mean, the fact that you got 4 first-round picks and are able to swap them too, I mean, that's really going to help you out. I mean, there's going to be players in next year's draft and the year after that, and maybe even 2023. I mean, we haven't really, the 2023 guys are like sophomores right now. So we have no idea unless, there's someone that we actually know about. I think Mikey Williams might be like the only one. But, at the end of the day, from what I'm noticing and what I'm seeing here is that I think that this is going to be a great. So who got all the picks? So from what I'm reading and what I understand, the Brooklyn Nets got the 2022, 2024, and 2026. So I guess there was only 3 unprotected first round picks. So it looks like they got 3 first round picks, and then the Rockets get the 2022 first round pick via the Bucks. So it looks like Cleveland, from that trade of trading away Jared Allen to Cleveland, they get that first round pick. So really, they got 4 first round picks to play with. It's the Bucks first round pick. So obviously with the Bucks, you never know. It could be high, it could be low. We don't know. But they also get pick swaps in 21, 23, 25, and 27. In the eventual case where maybe it doesn't work out, where James Harden says, I want to get out of here again. Kevin Durant says, let's move to a different team. Kyrie Irving says, I don't want to play basketball, or I want to move to a different team, or even retire even. Like, this to me is going to signal a situation where we see that what did the Pacers give to... Oh, so the Pacers, all they had to do was give up Victor Oladipo, and they got Caris LeVert. I guess that's all they really wanted, was Caris LeVert. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's just my humble opinion as to what's going on for that trade. But yeah, I mean, getting player pick swaps, that could potentially bite the Brooklyn Nets again in the butt. I mean, this to me is kind of a situation that I'm noticing in the NBA. I think pick swaps are kind of the safer bet, because it's like you still get a pick, even though it might not be like the high pick that you were expecting. You still at least get to have one and have a chance to draft some sort of player that can help you out. But man, like I said, I think you need to be careful if you're a Brooklyn Nets fan and asking for this trade, just because, like I said, of this point, you don't know whether or not Kyrie Irving is going to come back and play basketball. Not like forever, right? But you don't know when he will decide whether he wants to take another break or whether he wants to go. And if anything, and that's the thing, like if anything bad happens, war, whatever's going on, like you're going to see Kyrie Irving, like, are we going to see Kyrie Irving kind of skip practice, skip work, and do these functions and gatherings? Like that to me was like the ultimate sign of disrespect. And I think that Kyrie Irving does owe Steve Nash an apology, in my opinion. It's one of those things that kind of frustrates me as a basketball fan. Is just, I know that Kyrie Irving has other aspirations, and I'm the same way with like a guy like LeBron James. I'm the same way with a guy like Jaylen Brown. Like, Jaylen Brown, who's on my team. I do appreciate them. I do think that they're good. And I think that they're also really well in the community. I mean, Marcus Rashford of Manchester United, as much as I don't like Man United, I do like what he does to help the kids out, to get them fed, to get the public school system, to get them the meals that they need. I am 100% in agreement with what they do in terms of activism. But they also play basketball too. Like they're not just gonna say, yeah, we're gonna not play basketball anymore and do this. Like, and not to say that that's never the case. I'm gonna be mad or upset, but I think you need to like let everybody know, or dedicate and say, you know what, this season I'm gonna take the year off. I'm gonna retire so I can focus on activism, and I will 100% back in agreement with anybody that does that. I really will. But you have to be upfront and honest with the owners and also the coach. The fact that the coach, Steve Nash, didn't know about this, I would say, like, that you were leaving and that you were going somewhere, that to me is the most disappointing. And that's kind of like at the moment where I'm at with this team. Is just like, you got to do a better job of that. So at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. And, fingers crossed for the Brooklyn Nets. But man, I don't think I agree with the trade at all, in my opinion. I think it's a good trade, just not the trade that I would do. And let's see here. The shooting's off the charts, but have no defense. And yeah, you're right, Tyrese. Like the defense is going to be MIA. Like I told in the beginning of the chat, or of the stream, defensive rebounding is one of their worst, and that's with Jared Allen. But now that he's not on the team, where are you going to get your defensive rebounding from? Honestly, if I am if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I use a couple of those picks and get Andre Drummond. I will. I mean, I'm not sure what the cap space is going to look like for that. But man, I would do something about that defensive rebounding, because right now it's looking atrocious. I mean, you only have DeAndre Jordan, who's not the same DeAndre Jordan from like the Lob City days. Like this is like an old man DeAndre Jordan who's obviously benched for a guy like Jared Allen. And this to me is just kind of the craziest situation. And let's see here. Brooklyn has 3 open spots available, so it looks like they're going to get the roster. I mean, let's look at their roster right now. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, DeAndre Jordan, Joe Harris, Landry Shamet, Tyler Johnson, Timothy Luwalu, Jeff Green, Bruce Brown, Nick Claxton, Reggie Perry, Chris Chiozza, and Spencer Dinwiddie. And obviously Spencer Dinwiddie injured, so he's not going to be able to play. But man, like that's the thing. Like I don't think that this was necessarily a trade where like the team won. I really don't. I really don't think that this is a trade that they won. Like, is it a good trade? Yeah. Like ultimately, you need a superstar will definitely help you get to the championship, get you to the promised land. But I'm looking at the LA Lakers, and I'm sure the LA Lakers are kind of like, like this is nothing. Like a little, they have a little fly that lands on you, and you just flick it off. Because that's exactly what the Brooklyn Nets are when they did this trade. Like, I know that the Nets think that they made an amazing move. They got the players that they needed, but man, I just don't necessarily agree with the player that they got, because we don't know whether or not James Harden might do the same thing. He might call, the Brooklyn Nets the Knicks of the, I don't know. They called the Houston Rockets the Knicks of the South. Maybe he'll just call them Knicks 2.0. The Brooklyn Knicks. Like that, he might do that. And so, like, to me, I think this also sets a bad precedent that basically you can eat your way out, or you can not be in shape and get to the places that you want. And I'm not here trying to defend the owners or defend the teams for like, the teams can do whatever they want. But what I will say is that, like, in order to like get some mutual respect, just tell the Houston Rockets you're not interested in playing for them. You'd like to move on. You thank them for giving you the best years and giving you probably the MVP, an MVP that you probably would not likely have won without D'Antoni and the Houston Rockets giving you that system. Thank the team, but ultimately say, like, at this time I choose not to play and I choose to support my teammates. But ultimately I have to decline playing for you guys, and I hope that you guys are going to listen and trade me, because I've done everything that I can do here, and I want to move on to another chapter in my life and actually start winning basketball and start getting championships. Because I think with the roster right now, I don't think it's enough to win championships. I mean, even saying that to your teammates, like guys like John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, like those guys are NBA veterans. Boogie Cousins, I can't remember if he won a ring with the LA Lakers. I'm not sure if he gets like a ring associated with them just because he was part of the roster at one point. But that's kind of my thing, and my ordeal is that, you get rid of a guy. And James Harden, like the Houston Rockets, again, did something for James Harden. So I think James Harden does need to take back some of the accusations and the things that he did say about the organization, because he really got everything that he wanted. He got the trade that he wanted. He got the moves that he wanted. He got the coach that he wanted. And now we're seeing here that this is kind of what we're going to notice about the, I would say, the Brooklyn Nets at this point. And also the Houston Rockets. Like the Houston Rockets, I don't think are the biggest losers, because they were able to get 4 first-round picks and Victor Oladipo without giving away too much. I mean, all he basically did was just player swap Caris LeVert. Like, that's nothing. And so I think that that's a great move for the Brooklyn Nets. And let's just refresh to make sure that there's no other news and rumors. Let's go to Sham really quick and see if there's anything here. So here's kind of the breakdown of it. So sources full current trade. So Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Rhodonis Kirkus, 3 Brooklyn first-rounders, 1 Milwaukee first-round unprotected, 4 Brooklyn first-round pick player swaps. We need to see what the protection are on those picks. But the Nets get James Harden. The Pacers get Caris LeVert, a second-rounder. The Cavs get Jared Allen and Taurean Prince. Like, to me, like, the Cavs getting Jared Allen, like, what does that really do for your team? You already have JaVale McGee. You have Andre Drummond, and now you're adding another center. Like, I mean, what are we going to be playing? Like, freaking basketball from, like, the 1920s where bigs ruled supreme? Like, that's not the game anymore. And so I'm wondering if the Cavs are going to try and trade Andre Drummond, or try and trade well, they won't trade JaVale McGee because he doesn't really have that much trade value. But a guy like, maybe Jared Allen, or maybe you're trading a guy like Andre Drummond. Like, maybe one of those guys gets traded. I mean, we'll see what happens. But, at the end of the day, we're looking at probably like one of the biggest blockbuster trades that we've seen in a while. And like I said, let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys make of this whole story? Like I said, this is an amazing time, but at the same time, I'm not sure that this is kind of the right move that I would have done. Like, it's a good move, just not a great move. And ultimately, like, I want to know if Kyrie Irving would retire if he would have gotten traded. That's kind of my biggest, like, what if for the NBA. But we'll also talk about this trade as well, because it's part of the... Excuse me. It is also part of the deal, and that is, of course, Indiana Pacers have agreed to trade Victor Oladipo to Houston, Rockets in a package centered on Caris LeVert. So I think it's Caris LeVert and a second-round pick for Victor Oladipo. Or maybe it's the other way around, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, let's look at Sham's tweet again. Okay. So the Houston Rockets pretty much got some really good players. I mean, they got a guy in Caris LeVert. Or sorry, the Pacers got a guy in Caris LeVert who's a great scorer, but ultimately, I think I would honestly pick Victor Oladipo just because defensively, I think he can guard people. I don't know what the Pacers were thinking trading away Victor Oladipo. I think there was a good, yeah, it was a big yawn. I do think that this was kind of a bad trade in my opinion. I mean, trading away Victor Oladipo, I'm not sure if I agree with that at all. You know, Victor Oladipo is one of those guys that is just not, it's not someone that you want to trade away. You know, we saw what he was doing with the Indiana Pacers. I mean, I just watched the game last night with him and the Golden State Warriors, and he was one of the reasons why they won. Obviously, Sabonis being your superstar of that team is definitely helpful, but like Victor Oladipo does a lot of things too with Malcolm Brogdon. Like, I mean, you get rid of a guy like that, and now you're just basically filled with a bunch of like stars and not like, you know, close to superstar players. I mean, Victor Oladipo was an all-star at one point. So, like, to me, I'm just a little bit confused on that story and just confused on that trade because I don't necessarily think that it was the right trade, in my opinion. And then let's look at Sham really quick, just making sure that there is no all four first-round picks and all first-round picks player swaps to the Rockets are unprotected. So, like I said, the Brooklyn Nets could suck for the next 2 or 3 years, and you know the Houston Rockets instantly win the trade. Like, you know, the fact that the Nets only got one player, that worries me a little bit because, like I said, you gave away, how many is that? You give away Caris LeVert, you give away one, Jared Allen, Taurean Prince. That's 3 players that you just gave away. And 3 really key players. So, I mean, that's kind of one of the things that we need to kind of watch and see, like, and monitor how this team, I would say the Brooklyn Nets team, is going to do and fare without that at hand. But let's look at what Tyree said. Which team is more talented, Brooklyn KD or Golden State KD by far? I understand you have a guy are you talking about like which team is more talented? More talented? I still think that the KD in Golden State was more talented because that team if we remember, that was a 73 win team. Obviously, this team, the Brooklyn Nets team so far, is not going to get 73 wins because there's only 72 games to begin with, and you've already lost 6 games. I mean, I think that Golden State KD is a team that we won't see, you know, for a very long time. Like maybe when I'm 80 years old, maybe when I'm 60 years old, we might see another team like that. But that team was way too talented, man. I would say that that's a team that you will never see again. And the fact that you have so much shooting. You have Steph Curry who could just, you know, be off the ball and score at will. Klay Thompson could D you up and get 35 points again. You got Draymond Green basically calling out the plays, letting you know, like, hey, man, he's going to set a back screen here. He's going to do this here. Like, there are so many things, man. And I just think that it's one of those things where I still think that the Golden State, Kevin Durant and the team there is a little bit more talented. I'm just saying 3v3, no, with not win column. Oh, you're talking about like KD. Okay, so you're talking about like KD, Steph, and Klay versus KD, James, and Kyrie. I mean, I don't know if Kyrie's going to show up, so it might be 3v2. So, but if I had to just go like strictly talent for talent, I think for what KD likes to do, I think the Golden State Warriors KD is going to be better because he's going to be able to attack. He's going to be able to, you know, drive, layup, and finish. Meanwhile, you know, you got the KD that's with James Harden and Kyrie, and they're not necessarily the best shooters. And, you know, in a game of like 21 and other things like that, I definitely see the Golden State Kevin Durant a little bit better. So let me put on some ESPN really quick or just some like noise to listen to. I'm going to hit the restroom really quick before we continue talking about this. You know, I just think there'll be too many bricks in my opinion, but let's listen to this.
Where do you think you rank among the NBA's best players right now?
I feel like I'm the best player.
James Harden in the clutch. He's unguardable. Steph back shoots for 3. Got it.
All right, let me hit the restroom really quick and I'll be right back.
By the time James Harden was winning 6th Man of the Year in 2012 with the Thunder, the beard had become a brand, stretching out beyond his chin and overtaking the distinguishing elements of his lower face. He was just The beard.
We had a chemistry. My role was to come off the bench, and that was for the better of the team.
He was the perfect counterweight to his Star Thunder teammates. The bridge between Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. With the three, it appeared the road through the Western Conference would have to stop in OKC for years to come.
Sam Presti called me and just said that, sorry, we love you, but, we've traded you to the Houston Rockets. That was, a very, very sad night.
It's the kind of trade that has become something of legend. The Harden trade. Branching endless what-ifs about a lost Thunder dynasty.
We had big plans that we were going to, win a championship for years. That ended quick.
Instantly, Harden validated his star power.
First game, I had like 37 points and like 12 assists. Next game, I had 45 points. Those 2 games gave me that confidence that I was going to be all right. I was going to be good.
At this point, it looked like his beard had grown a beard. He started the process of breaking basketball, pushing isolation offense to its limits, drawing fouls and shooting volume threes. He stockpiled scoring titles, winning the last 3, along with an MVP in 2018. He took the Rockets to the brink, twice to the Western Conference Finals, and a Game 7 home loss away from the Finals in 2018.
We had opportunities. We just didn't have that extra juice that we needed.
I think it's been clear that the Rockets, there are many attempts to find a partner in crime for James Harden. Like, that time has expired, unfortunately.
He had star teammates, from Dwight to CP3 to Russ, each partnership running its course. The end of the Harden era in Houston brings reflection on those close calls and high-profile failures. But it was also the evolution of a quirky, crafty, unconventional scorer into an offensive savant.
Alrighty, we are back. So this video should be almost over. Just want to see if anybody chatted. Nope.
Dribble the ball for 20 seconds, and he still takes a shot. It's just not good basketball.
But yeah, I mean, just kind of looking at everything going on. I mean, we talk about, this Houston, like if you guys were watching the video that we just saw here down below, we talked about kind of like what happened with James Harden, right? Like he was obviously upset that he was traded away from Oklahoma. And maybe this might be like, and maybe I'm completely wrong on kind of the assessment of James Harden teaming back up with Kevin Durant. Now that James Harden has been on his own, has learned, and has become a better player throughout his years, like we're going to see if this is going to be like the stepping stone or the situation where a guy like James Harden can grow and develop and see if he can really add I would say, the firepower that Kevin Durant needs. Do you think this trade affects the Celtics? No, I don't think so, Tyrese. I mean, I think that this is another thing where I think the Celtics, I think that they were asking for too much, and I definitely would not have paid that. I understand that we're a young team, but like I'm pretty sure the Houston Rockets were asking for like the moon. I want to know what the Philly offer was going to be for a guy like James Harden. Was it going to be huge or was it going to be kind of small? Like obviously you're going to have Ben Simmons, you're going to have Tyrese Maxey. That was kind of the rumored. And then it was like probably those amount of picks. But I think at the end, I think the Houston Rockets took the best deal that was going to give them like players that could grow and develop. Like obviously John Wall, Boogie Cousins, and Victor Oladipo aren't the immediate answer to a future for the Houston Rockets. I think that they're going to need a little bit more players. They're going to need a little bit more from other teams because I think that they really do want to compete. I think they want to compete and try and win championships, but I think that they need to be realistic and see that this roster is really old. It's not a young roster anymore. The Houston Rockets have probably one of the oldest rosters, I would say, in the league. And I think that they really should have done and gotten rid of PJ Tucker too, because I think PJ Tucker doesn't want to be there as well. He hasn't. I don't think PJ Tucker's ever said that, but I think that he wants to go to a contending team, and I think that PJ Tucker should be traded and going to a different team. I would love to see him, maybe with the Celtics or maybe with another contending team. Like if I'm the Nets, I don't know why I didn't ask for PJ Tucker. I mean, it's not like PJ Tucker's contract is that big anyway. But it is what it is. It looks like Zion has entered protocol, so he's going to be out. And we will be talking about that a little bit later in the stream. I think this will make the Greek Freak demand to trade next year. They don't. Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. Like we talked about with the Bogdanovich trade. Obviously, he's hurt now, but we saw how the Bucks were trying to add superstars. Not superstars because Bogdanovich is not a superstar, but they're trying to add star players to surround a guy like Giannis. Now the biggest question is going to be like, who's going to be some big free agents that want to come to Milwaukee? That to me is going to be the biggest question. And, you know, Giannis has said he's already pledged his allegiance to the Milwaukee Bucks, signing that long-term extension. And we'll see if they can kind of create something out of that situation. But, you know, this does, like you said earlier, Tyrese, this does relieve a little bit of pressure from a guy like Kyrie Irving. But at the same time, you know, I just don't know. I really don't know if that's going to be like this, the way that the situation is at hand. Like, are we going to get a Kyrie Irving that's committed? That to me is my biggest question mark for the Brooklyn Nets. Are you going to get a recommitted Kyrie Irving now that you've added this player? Now that you've added James Harden? Because I think that to me is one of those things that we could see that derail the Houston Rockets. And you said here the Greek Freak could be going to LA with his older brother. I mean, he could be going to LA with his older brother, but I don't think that there's necessarily an avenue where I see a trade like that happening unless you're going to give up Kyle Kuzma and a bunch of other players to get a guy like Giannis. And maybe it works, but who knows? We'll see. Let me see here if there's any other news and rumors coming out here. So this is, of course, coming from Jason Dumas. So the Jason Dumas tweet that I've gotten here from one of my friends is that the Brooklyn Nets were always interested in acquiring James Harden, but the deal became imperative in the light of situation with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie is willing to sit out the year if need be. Those close to him are saying that to me. Like, and I just got that tweet from my friend. Of course, that's from Jason Dumas. But man, I think that this trade really, I think this is the reason why the Brooklyn Nets made that trade. And I think I'll keep saying that over and over again is because, like I said, we don't know what's going on with Kyrie. I mean, Kyrie could be, you know, he could be happy, he could be sad. You have no idea what Kyrie's mood or where position he's on, you know, every day. And so I think the reason why you got James Harden is because, look, James Harden might be a piece of work, but he's going to be a piece of work that if you trade him to the right team, he's going to give you 110%. And so and I think the reason why they did that too is because, like I said, they don't know what's going to be going on with Kyrie Irving. We don't know whether or not Kyrie Irving is going to be, I would say, like there to help the Brooklyn Nets. Like, I think having Kyrie now is a luxury compared to being a necessity with this James Harden trade. And I think that's kind of the viewpoint that I'm going to be going with for the foreseeable future. Who cares about what Kyrie Irving does? KD and Harden. I mean, it is dangerous, but the way that you made yourself dangerous, Tyrese, is you gave up a lot and you still kept Kyrie Irving. And so I think that, I mean, like, as much as we dislike Kyrie Irving for what he did in Boston, he's still a talking point because he's still going to be a player. You won't be able to double team Harden. No, you won't be able to. And KD will be kind of a glitch in that way. Walker, big day, BMAC. Yeah, I mean, this is probably the day that I was hoping for today. You know, it was kind of going to be a slow news day. We're going to talk about the COVID protocol. But, you know, luckily with this trade, we don't have to talk about that as much. I mean, we will talk about it a little bit because I do think some of the rules are dumb, but some of the rules are a necessity, I feel like, for these NBA players. But like I talked about, I think this all has to stem from Kyrie Irving, not being there and whether or not he's going to come back or not. I mean, look, like I said, James Harden's a piece of work. Like, he's probably one of the most annoying employees that you have to work with. But if he's happy and he's like satisfied in the situation he's in, he's going to be a lot better and more manageable to deal with than not having him there. And so, as we kind of pertain for the future and see what's going to be going on, I think that this was a great move. I think by both parties. Like, I think the Brooklyn Nets does this Brooklyn Nets trade make them better than the Lakers? Not by a long shot. I think the Lakers are too deep and too talented, in my opinion, to warrant them to be in a situation where they're not going to be the best team. But Tyrese, you did talk about what about Victor Oladipo. I think that was probably the dumbest trade that the Indiana Pacers could have ever made, in my opinion. The reason why I think it's dumb, what do you think about the Cavs part in the trade? I think that they got Allen to fit timeline and flip. Yeah, I think they did flip. I think they're trying to flip Drummond. And I'm not sure if the Celtics will make a move on him, but I think some team will make a move. I think that's the reason why they got Jared Allen, because he's younger. You could build a team around him, Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. I think that's an easier big three to kind of team up because how young all three of those guys are compared to Andre Drummond, who's already 27, 28. And so I think you'll see Andre Drummond on a different team, probably getting some other helping some other team out, whether it's honestly, I think the Lakers are going to be looking at it. If I'm the Lakers, I kind of look at it in my opinion, but I do think that he would be, set off to a team where he's going to be very valuable. And the way that he's playing right now, I think they're going to get a lot of value out of him, and they're going to improve their team. And let's see here. Walker said, what do you think? Okay, we talked about that. Yeah, I think most superstars that won like MJ were hard to play with because they were so competitive, in my opinion. That's what Harden needs to do. He needs someone who's the superstar to put him in his place. And I think you're right in that, Tyrese. I do think that adding a guy like James Harden and Kevin Durant teaming up together, it'll push them to be better players. The question and the issue I have here is that, like, how much did you have to give up to get a guy like James Harden? And not really saying that you're going to, I would say, not get rid of a guy like, who is the guy that they should get rid of? Get rid of a guy like Kyrie Irving. Like, I know that Kyrie Irving, he's a pain in the butt sometimes, but he's good enough. It's just one of those things that you have to just think about. And so we'll see what happens. I think this is obviously one of the biggest trades. We've been on here for an hour almost. I mean, this is going to be, like I said, one of the biggest news and rumors and basketball opinion videos that we've had out here because of how big this news is. I mean, like I said, we talked about this so many times. I mean, well, most of these guys who are traded are not a top 5 player. I mean, James Harden's not top 5. I think he's probably top 10, top 15. Victor Oladipo probably kind of in that like top 30 when he's healthy, obviously. I think Victor Oladipo can really do some damage in Houston. And now that you have John Wall and Boogie Cousins, I think that's a better fit than the trade with Ben Simmons. Like for the Houston Rockets, I think that's a better fit because, I mean, think about it. You have a guy that's going to be a 3-and-D, but also can attack and make his own shots. You also have a guy in John Wall who's probably going to be more of a shot creator, try and finish and shoot mid-ranges in the middle. Boogie Cousins can stretch the floor and kind of be there as well. Let's see here. So we got here from Tyrese. Well, most of the guys who are trading on top 5, Kyrie is going to be freed because he won't feel like he has to do it all, in my opinion. Think Brooklyn will keep Harris and starting him 5 or have him at 6-man. Let's see here. So you got point guard, like, and that's the thing, like, without Kyrie Irving there, I think Joe Harris starts. But with Kyrie Irving, because their lineup was actually not that bad. You had what? You had Kyrie Irving. Like, let's talk about their lineup at the beginning. You had Kyrie Irving, Spencer Dinwiddie, Kevin Durant. Who was their 4th guy? Let me look at their depth chart really quick. NBA, Brooklyn Nets, and just kind of look at this depth chart really quick. You had Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Jeff Green sometimes, but it'd be Joe Harris. And then you would have, when he was healthy, you would have a guy in Spencer Dinwiddie. I think that lineup honestly was good. I think Joe Harris is probably going to come off the bench now, be that 3-point shooter to come off and give them some run. I mean, even then, I would honestly take off Jeff Green and put Joe Harris. I understand you're not going to play. I mean, you're not going to play defense anyway. It looks like with this team, why not just go offensive gimmick and just start, creating offensive opportunities for everybody. I think that's what Steve Nash is probably going to go for. And this also makes Steve Nash's job just that much harder. He has to now start talking about, what he's going to be doing for that roster. What's he going to be doing to make sure that team in that situation is going to be better for them. But like I said, we'll see what's going on. Like the NBA right now is in such a interesting place at the moment. But at the end of the day, I will still say this time and time again. No one's beaten the Lakers. No one. It's just one of those things that I just don't think that even with the moves made, it just doesn't matter because the Lakers are just that much talented. They have that much depth. And right now the Lakers are playing they're playing okay. They're not playing their best, but when they turn it up, that's probably one of the best teams in the NBA. Not saying it's the best team in NBA history, but it's one of the best teams in the current NBA. And I think that that's a better duo and possibly trio with Dennis Schroeder. Like, I know that people don't like Dennis Schroeder. I know Dennis Schroeder isn't everybody's cup of tea. But I do like Dennis Schroeder. I think he's a great player. And you see that now that, he has, I feel like, honestly, Dennis Schroeder's a better fit than Kyrie Irving was with LeBron James. And so we're seeing what Sean says, Nets are beating the Lakers. Book it. Okay. Round of golf on you, Sean. If the Brooklyn Nets beat the LA Lakers, round of golf for the 4 people that we go with. Socially distanced, of course. I'm down to book it. Book it. You pay for mine, I pay for yours. Round of golf. Whenever they play the final, I believe it's like August or something like that. Let's book it. Round of golf between me and you. Who's going to win? If the Lakers win, I get a free round of golf. Nets win, you get a round of golf. But yeah, I think the Lakers are just too good at the moment. Like even with the trade, like I said, you still have a lot of players, you have a lot of depth. Horton Tucker is coming into his own at this moment. I think you're gonna see the real situation here as it pertains, like I said, to the LA Lakers, and kind of seeing here. I think they get Kyrie Irving to check in and acquire some size. Defensive key is very competitive in a final. I mean, I think it's a competitive final, but it's not. It's a final that goes 5 games. I really don't think it's gonna be that competitive because defensively and defensive rebounding, the Brooklyn Nets have no answer. And you just got rid of all that depth. No way. And we've seen James Harden in the playoffs. Like it's the same thing with pandemic P, playoff P, push off P, Paul George, George Paul. Doesn't matter. Him and James Harden, when the clock strikes playoffs, these guys turn into the biggest pumpkins I think I've ever seen in my life. They really do. They turn into people and players that like we don't even recognize. Like James Harden in the playoffs is absolutely trash. 27 missed threes in a row from that Houston Rockets team. I know that they're not all James Harden, but 27 missed threes. That's crazy to me that happened. I mean, really think about it. James Harden could have been in the NBA Finals, but ultimately didn't because he didn't really shoot well enough to get there. So, in my opinion, I think that this is kind of the sad state of affair that we're in right now. And I think that people are just going to realize that the Lakers are just going to win it once again. And let's see here. Celtics could be Lakers, but we need to put more beef. Yeah, we need more beef inside. It'll be interesting to see like if we do kind of make a move for Andre Drummond or if we make a move for another center. Like I said, I want Vucevic. I really do want Vucevic or Sabonis. I think that the trade that we saw here today, I think that makes the Indiana Pacers a little bit worse of a team, and I think that we should try and swoop in and get Sabonis because I think I would honestly pay a pretty penny for Sabonis. Like if we just had to give up a couple players and some first round picks to get Sabonis, I would do it because Sabonis is only 24, 25 years old. DeMontis is 24 years old. I would take that in a heartbeat. Whatever this is, I would take this. I know people are excited about LeVert, but I think that Sabonis would be much better with a guy like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown compared to Karis LeVert and kind of the funky bunch in Indiana. Like that Indiana team is a decent team. It's just not a great team. And so, like I said, I will still be in support of trying to get Sabonis, but that's just my opinion, or Vucevic. And let's talk about this. Let's listen to the video from Adrian Wojnarowski really quick.
How this happened and how we got to this point.
First, guys, I am thrilled to be on this show. You guys know how much I love watching you guys.
Man.
But
you're the man, Woj.
Listen, this is a massive deal all around. Listen, for the Brooklyn Nets to go out and get James Harden, this was something that Kevin Durant very much wanted. He and Harden started talking about this months ago. And listen, with the uncertainty surrounding Kyrie Irving right now, and I think there's still hope, expectation, he returns and plays for this team. Remember, free agency comes back upon you pretty quick in this league. Kevin Durant's in the second year of a 4-year deal, and getting Harden, that's another reason for Durant to want to stay. But now, if you get Irving back and he's back to playing at a high level, you have a 1-2-3, perhaps unlike we've seen in this league in the modern era, but certainly it comes at a steep price. 4 first-round picks, 4 pick swaps. The picks are unprotected. One of those picks is coming from Cleveland. This is part of a 3-way deal, really a 4-way deal. Karis LeVert goes from the Nets to the Indiana Pacers, and Indiana sends Victor Oladipo to Houston. So a lot of moving parts in this deal.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those moving parts, and the Kyrie piece of this is really interesting. I want to get back to that, but let's talk about this 4-team deal. Give us a little more detail on the second level part of this, other than just James Harden joining the Nets.
Well, I think this was a deal really that came together in the last couple days, and Philadelphia was very much in pursuit of James Harden. Obviously, Daryl Morey, their president, traded for him in Houston, won a great deal with him. But ultimately, this Nets deal, this package, bringing Cleveland into it, got it done. And I think for Houston, you look at them, remember, they gave up a lot of picks in that Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook deal. They get them back and then some, and it gives the Rockets now, their new GM, Rafael Stone, an ability to start a rebuild. Victor Oladipo's in the last year of his contract. You know, they can see how that goes. Do they want to re-sign him? Does he want to be there? But certainly a blockbuster deal by any standard in the NBA.
You know, and then, of course, we have the disrespect that Boogie Cousins talked about. And we talked about that a little bit earlier in the stream. But yeah, I mean, this is, to me, like, we saw here that the Brooklyn Nets just kind of were, like, on a whim, just said, like, hey, let's try and make this trade happen. Because, like I said, I think the Kyrie Irving thing really, it didn't scare them, but it more so meant, like, all right, we need to make some moves in order to win. The Houston Rockets were in a position where they basically give away all their assets to get a Russell Westbrook and a Chris Paul. So they got those assets back, like Wojnarowski said, and it's just kind of one of those things that we're going to have to look into. Let me make sure that there's no other updates from Sham. Doesn't look like it. Let's see if Adrian Wojnarowski has any updates. It just kind of talks about the situation. I mean, like, look, they have about 3 spots. They have 3 spots open at this moment. I mean, like, we'll see what happens. They have about 5.7 million in tax exceptions, so they can use that money to get another player to join their team. But man, it is one of those things, man, where we're looking at a really good player. I mean, we're looking at a player that could change a franchise in no matter what. But do I think it changes the outcome of what's going to be going on in the NBA? I don't think so. In my opinion, like I said, I think the Lakers still win it. I think this trade is good for I would say, for NBA fans, because we've been kind of clamoring for and asking for a big trade to happen. And we knew that Ben Simmons or James Harden was kind of the bigger culprit of, or I should say, like, the biggest, like, probably the best trade pieces that are out there that someone will actually trade for. We'll see if Ben Simmons gets traded. That now I'm a little bit iffy on that, but like, and that's the thing. And I think that's the reason why the Houston Rockets, and we'll talk, and I know that this isn't like, and I'm going to come across as like a Ben Simmons hater, but man, I think it's damning that they wouldn't trade away, or that they wouldn't even want Ben Simmons. I mean, if we look at Ben Simmons' last stat line, I mean, look at the stat line. Not Ben Shapiro, Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, stats. I want you to look at the stats from the last game. Look at his stats from this regular season. Terrible. God-awful. 2 for 2 in last night's game against the Heat. You would think with a stat line of 5 points, you would think, oh, maybe he got hurt, maybe something happened to him. But then you look at the rest of the stat line. 6 rebounds, 12 assists, 2 steals. Nah, man. I as a 6'10 player, like, Ben Simmons is now become basically a big Rondo. Like a Rondo for the Boston Celtics. Like, that's basically Ben Simmons at this point. But at least Rondo like learned to attack and score. Ben Simmons, I think, is afraid to attack. I mean, when you're one of your best players, the player that you think is going to be one of your best players, attempts only 13 shots as kind of like the average, I would say, it looks like. That's got to be some damning evidence against you, man. Like right now, like, I think that the Philadelphia 76ers could have actually benefited from having a young player. I mean, Joel Embiid is not getting any younger. He's 25, 26, I believe. So, Joel Embiid isn't getting any younger, and now you're seeing the situation at hand where I think they should have pulled the trigger and try and win a championship with these two players. But then again, James Harden doesn't like to play with bigs. And so maybe that's the reason why that trade didn't work out too well and why Joel Embiid maybe didn't sign off on it. So that kind of goes to show you that Ben Simmons is now an expendable player. For someone that made the All-Star about a year ago, like, I think that this is kind of damning evidence. And until he develops an attacking drive, until he develops something where he is actually consistent with, I don't think he should be making any more All-Stars. And I know that's harsh of me to say, but man, it's one of those things where I don't think Ben Simmons is today's NBA. I think he was born about 10 or 20 years too late. And so we'll see what happens. But, I mean, that's kind of really it, guys. I mean, this is kind of the breaking news. And obviously, like I said, with the Victor Oladipo to to the Rockets. I think it makes the team more well-balanced. It makes the team pretty good, and it's kind of that transition year, so that way when they do get those draft picks, they can trade away those draft picks if they wanted to make a super team, or they could just say, you know what, we want to start off young. Well, maybe we'll be able to get like a Monty Bates or maybe one of these other players that they've been asking for, and maybe that's the way that they go. But at the end of the day, I don't think that this was the right move for the Indiana Pacers, and I think it makes them actually worse and not better, in my opinion. And so that's what I kind of think of that James Harden trade. We talked about here that there's real concern across the NBA for Kyrie Irving from people who know him. So Kyrie Irving has yet to explain his ongoing absence from Brooklyn due to personal reasons. Sean Marks indicated that they have yet to finalize a date for when he will return to the team. That to me is also pretty damning too. The fact that you haven't created a return date or said, hey, you got to return by this date because we're trying to win a championship. You got to go through quarantine. You got to go through all this other stuff. So we're not going to have you even for another week. And so I'm sure they would love to start the quarantine process for a guy like Kyrie Irving so they can get better and get pieces and actually, try and contend for a championship. But we'll see what happens. Let's continue reading. Irving was a volunteer on an organized Zoom event for Tahini and Abushi's camp for the district attorney of Manhattan. There are dozens of reports calling everybody that can think of trying to get to the bottom line. Irving, it appears a few people inside the NBA know what's going on with Irving, and a few who probably do, like the Nets officials, aren't saying. The real concern throughout the league from people who know him. So Varna asked Nash if he was unsure or confident that Irving would return this season. Sure, replied Nash. Like I said, right now I got to focus on coaching this team and getting the best out of them. And that to me, you're putting I can't believe that you put Steve Nash in this predicament. And like I said, I would love Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving needs to issue an apology to Steve Nash because I don't think he's communicating with Steve Nash whatsoever. And if I'm Steve Nash, if I'm the head coach, like I'm pissed. I'm actually really upset because communication is key in everything, right? For example, if I was working a 9 or maybe not even 9 to 5, let's say I'm working retail like I did back in my college days. And, I decide that I don't want to work today. Do I say, hey, do I not communicate and just not go to work and say, and they're going to call me and say like, hey, where are you? I mean, that's kind of thing. And I know that people are saying like, oh, you can't equate what happens in retail to NBA because it's different, but it's not different. It's the same thing whether you're in a school, like doing a school project, or whether you're working in retail, or whether you're an NBA professional basketball player. It doesn't matter. Communication is going to be your biggest tool and asset to getting anything accomplished. Basketball is a team sport. If it was a solo sport and Kyrie Irving did this, I would be, I don't think anybody would care, honestly. People would be like, Kyrie Irving, take your time, do what you need to do, make sure that you stay mentally healthy. And, if there's justice reform stuff that you need to get taken care of, go and do that. We believe in you. We know that what you are about. But without telling your teammates, without kind of giving them the proper notification, without really getting into all the nitty-gritty details, I just kind of lose. It just kind of baffles me at this point, what we're seeing here. We're seeing a situation where nobody knows what's going on in Kyrie's mind. And like I said, I think he does owe Steve Nash an apology because, not telling your boss, your teacher, your principal, or, your employer, like not telling them, hey, I'm going to be late to work, or hey, I'm going through some things. I really need some time. You put people in a pinch. I mean, think about like the 9 to 5 job or the retail job. You're working your butt off. You're trying to make money so you could, do the things that you need to do. But it's Friday. You want some time off and you want to relax and enjoy like the nighttime scenery, like under the stars or camping or whatever you like to do. And then here comes Kyrie Irving, the employee that says, hey, I'm going to be gone, and doesn't tell anybody. Don't hear about him for 2 weeks. Don't you text him, no answer. And that to me is where it's frustrating, in my opinion. Like you have to tell your employers where you're going, what you're doing. Not saying that you have to say like, who, what, when, where, why, and then give your blood sample so they know what's going on. No, this to me is one of those situations where you just say, hey, look, I'm not feeling it today. Going through some things. Wish I could elaborate, but it's more so personal. And then you just do your business. But seeing you on that Zoom call the other night, that to me was kind of the biggest low blow. Because like I said, Steve Nash is wondering where you are. He's game planning for you and Kevin Durant. He's not just game planning for Spencer Dinwiddie or Caris LeVert when he was on the team. He's not doing it for Chiosa or Luwalu. He's catering the offense and setting everything up for you so you can get your points, you can get your assists, and you can get your rebounds and score and, you know, make the money that you can. But what I'm seeing from Kyrie Irving, what I'm seeing from everybody here is that that's not the case right now. I think that basketball is not really in his mind, and I think that he needs to start thinking about, and I don't know why people were mad about Stephen A saying that he should retire. I think the Brooklyn Nets need to ask him whether he's in or out, just like Pat Riley used to say, and I stole that from Shannon Sharp. They just need to say, like, are you in or are you out? And I talked about it last night on my stream too. You need to be honest with the Brooklyn Nets organization and say whether or not you think that you can continue playing this NBA game or whether you think that it's just time to go. Because right now you're putting the Nets in a situation where they've just made a huge move and don't know whether or not you're going to be part of that move in terms of being part of the plan to win a championship. Or if you're going to be on the bench or you're going to be doing your activism, it doesn't matter. But you need to be honest and straight up with your employers. And so that's kind of like the last message that I have for you guys. Make sure that you contact your employers. Make sure that you are communicating with them because, you know, you don't want to have this miscommunication and then someone does something, someone does another thing, and then you're kind of where you're at right now, which is not good for anybody, right? You know, the Brooklyn Nets don't want to look like dummies and saying that, like, oh, you don't have control of your player, or like, hey, your players don't get punished for doing things. Meanwhile, these other organizations have to keep playing. Like, you know, Karl-Anthony Towns, you know, for the crappy situation that happened to his mom, you know, he still played. Like, you know, he may have taken, like I said, 1 or 2 days off, but he still played. He was still attacking. He was still doing everything. And so I think that's kind of one of the things that was kind of a little bit disappointing. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it here for The Charge. Thank you once again for joining me here. Appreciate each and every one of you. We will be back live tomorrow on Thursday to talk about this. Looks like we got somebody. Vibrant Star, trade him. Oh, talking about Kyrie Irving? Yeah, I think he definitely should be traded. I think, like I talked about, it's just, I think he's too much of a liability at this point to, you know, have him anywhere near the team and try to build success with him, because he obviously has a different mindset at this point, and that's A-okay. But that still doesn't excuse what happened in Brooklyn and what's going on in Brooklyn. But anyway, guys, like I said, my name is Bernie. Thank you once again for joining me here. Tyrese, appreciate you coming to the stream. Sean, appreciate you. Gabby, appreciate you. Appreciate anybody that's coming here on the stream. Like I said, guys, we'll be back on Thursday, probably later in the night, just because I have basketball training tomorrow. But anyway, guys, like I said, my name is Bernie. Thank you once again. Follow me, subscribe to The Charge, hit that like button, leave a comment after this video is done processing, and we'll catch you guys on tomorrow's stream. Anyway, guys, we'll catch you later. Peace.